Master Your Emotions, How to Stay Calm, Cool and in Control, written and published by Sonic Digest. Every person has a tipping point, a moment when the balance between control and chaos is tested, when the weight of emotions feels unbearable and the mind teeters on the edge of impulse. In these moments, it's not the circumstances that define us, but how we respond to them. The difference between reacting in anger or frustration and responding with calmness or clarity is often the single factor that shapes the outcome of a situation. What if, instead of being pulled into the current of our emotions, we could stand as the steady anchor amidst the storm? Our emotions are powerful, often overwhelming forces that color the way we perceive ourselves and the world around us. They can be the catalyst for creativity, empathy, and connection, but they can also be the source of unnecessary stress, conflict, and self-doubt. The key to mastering our emotions isn't about suppressing them, but learning to navigate them with awareness, intention, and strength. The process of becoming emotionally empowered is one of recognizing patterns, challenging old habits, and creating new pathways that lead us to a place of equilibrium, where we no longer feel at the mercy of our internal storms. There is a subtle but undeniable shift that occurs when we begin to understand the nature of our emotions, not as fleeting reactions, but as signals, information, and even guidance. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process of gaining mastery over what has always seemed uncontrollable. It's the difference between being tossed by the waves of life and learning how to ride them with skill and confidence. Those who have mastered their emotions are not immune to life's challenges. They are simply better equipped to face them with poise and resilience. This journey is not one of perfect control, but of consistent growth. It is about learning to acknowledge your emotions, honor them, and then make the conscious choice to respond rather than react. Imagine having the ability to face any situation, no matter how difficult, with composure. Imagine being able to create an emotional space that allows you to think clearly, act decisively, and maintain your sense of self amidst external pressure. This is not a distant ideal, but a tangible possibility for anyone willing to commit to the practice of emotional mastery. As we explore the path to emotional empowerment, we move beyond the surface-level reactions and dive deeper into understanding the core of what shapes us. It's not about eliminating emotions, but about shifting our relationship with them, turning them from potential barriers into powerful allies. The goal is not just emotional control, but emotional agility, the ability to move through life with awareness, adaptability, and an unshakable sense of inner calm. This is the foundation of true emotional mastery. Chapter 1. The Emotional Landscape. Emotions are the invisible currents that move through our lives, often unnoticed until they surge, pulling us in unexpected directions. Like the weather, they shift without warning, and yet they are as fundamental to our existence as the air we breathe. From the moment we wake, emotions shape our choices, perceptions, and interactions. They can either act as a guide, leading us toward growth and understanding, or as a barrier, clouding our judgment and influencing our decisions in ways we do not fully comprehend. At their core, emotions are signals. They speak to us about our needs, desires, and fears. Every emotional response is a reflection of something deeper within, whether it's a fear of failure, a desire for connection, or a longing for peace. These responses, while often automatic, are rooted in the way we perceive and interact with the world around us. When we encounter an event that triggers an emotion, be it joy, sadness, anger, or fear, it's not just a random reaction. It's an intricate dance between our mind, our past experiences, and our present reality. These emotional triggers are not inherently good or bad, but they provide us with insights into our mental and emotional makeup. As we navigate through life, the patterns of emotional responses are often formed over years. The way we react to situations, people, and events is influenced by a lifetime of experiences, from childhood up to our current circumstances. For example, a person who has faced repeated rejection may react with defensiveness or self-doubt when faced with criticism, while another, raised in a nurturing environment, might approach the same situation with confidence and curiosity. These emotional patterns, though deeply ingrained, are not immutable. They can evolve and shift, but only if we become aware of them and begin to understand their origins. The impact of emotions on our daily lives is profound. They affect our relationships, our work, and even our physical health. Consider how emotions like stress or anxiety can manifest in physical symptoms: tight shoulders, shallow breathing, or a racing heart. These emotional states don't just affect our mind. They reverberate throughout our bodies, leaving traces that are sometimes hard to ignore. The way we react emotionally to external events determines our experience of them. For instance, a challenging work situation may either feel like an opportunity to grow or an insurmountable obstacle, depending on how we emotionally engage with it. In relationships, emotions are the language we often speak, even when words are not exchanged. The unspoken tension in a room, the warmth of a smile, the discomfort of silence, all of these are emotional expressions. Understanding the emotional landscape of others, as well as our own, creates a foundation for connection. When we are in tune with the emotions of those around us, we can empathize and respond in a way that fosters understanding. On the other hand, when we are unaware of the emotional undercurrents, misunderstandings can arise, often leading to conflict. In our daily lives, we are constantly making choices that are influenced by our emotions. These decisions, whether big or small, can either move us toward our goals or away from them. When we are emotionally reactive, we may make decisions based on impulse, driven by fear, frustration, or excitement. Yet, when we are able to pause, observe, and choose our response with awareness, we take back control. In this way, emotions are not just reactions to the world, they are also a reflection of the power we have to shape our experiences. Learning to navigate this emotional landscape requires a shift in mindset. It involves recognizing that we are not our emotions. We experience them, but we are not defined by them. Emotions are fleeting, momentary experiences, and when we separate ourselves from them, we can begin to see them for what they truly are, valuable messengers that, when understood, can offer us deep insights into our inner world. Chapter 2: Decoding the Inner World. The mind is a labyrinth, intricate and ever-shifting. Beneath the surface of our everyday awareness lies a network of thoughts, beliefs, and past experiences that silently govern our emotions. It is within this vast inner world that the seeds of our feelings are planted. Understanding the forces at work in this unseen realm is essential to unlocking emotional freedom and clarity. Each emotional reaction is not an isolated event. It is the culmination of a series of hidden triggers, mental patterns, and unconscious beliefs. To truly grasp the depth of our emotions, we must first turn inward and examine the underlying causes that fuel them. Our emotions are rarely a direct response to external events. More often, they are shaped by the stories we tell ourselves about those events. This internal narrative, built over years of experiences, conditioning, and interpretations, colors how we perceive the world. For example, a minor comment from a colleague can evoke feelings of frustration or insecurity, not because of the comment itself, but because of the internal beliefs we hold about our worth or ability. If our sense of self is rooted in perfectionism, even a small critique can feel like a threat to our identity. In this way, our emotional responses are often reflections of our internal dialogue, not the external situation. The triggers that set off our emotional reactions are often deeply ingrained, forming a complex web of responses that have developed over time. These triggers can be subtle, a tone of voice, a particular situation, or even a memory. But the moment these triggers are activated, they can stir up an entire emotional storm. Recognizing these patterns is the first step in understanding their influence. When we begin to notice the specific cues that spark certain feelings, whether it's anxiety, anger, sadness, or excitement, we start to see the threads that tie together our emotional experiences. The roots of many emotional reactions are anchored in our past. Childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, and significant life events all contribute to the mental frameworks we carry with us. A child who grew up in an environment where emotions were either suppressed or dismissed might develop a pattern of avoiding or ignoring their own feelings as an adult. Similarly, someone who experienced rejection or abandonment may carry a deep fear of not being loved or valued, which can trigger feelings of anxiety or defensiveness in adult relationships. These early experiences leave lasting imprints, shaping the emotional filters through which we view the world. Mental patterns also play a crucial role in how we interpret and react to emotional stimuli. These patterns, often unconscious, guide our automatic responses and judgments. For instance, if we consistently interpret situations through a lens of suspicion, we may find ourselves reacting with distrust or defensiveness, even when there is no actual threat. If we hold a mindset that the world is a hostile place, we might be prone to seeing potential conflict in everyday interactions. These mental patterns are often rooted in beliefs that were formed long ago, sometimes as a way to protect ourselves from perceived dangers, but they can become limiting when carried into adulthood without examination. Our emotional reactions are often magnified by the stories we attach to them. If we experience anger, for example, we may begin to tell ourselves a story about the injustice or unfairness of the situation. This narrative reinforces the emotional intensity, trapping us in a cycle of negative thinking. The mind becomes fixated on the perceived wrong, heightening the emotional reaction and making it difficult to see the situation with clarity. In such moments, we become so entangled in the emotional charge that we lose sight of the bigger picture. The key to breaking this cycle is recognizing the story we are telling ourselves and questioning its validity. By disrupting the narrative, we create space for a more balanced and measured response. To navigate the inner world effectively, we must develop a practice of self-awareness. This means becoming attuned to the thoughts and beliefs that arise in response to external stimuli. When we feel a strong emotional reaction, we can pause and ask ourselves, what is the underlying belief or assumption driving this response? Is there a past experience that is coloring my perception of this moment? By examining these questions, we begin to unravel the mental patterns that influence our emotional reactions. Over time, this process allows us to identify and replace unhelpful patterns with healthier, more constructive ways of thinking. By shining a light on the hidden forces that shape our emotions, we gain greater control over them. Rather than being at the mercy of automatic emotional reactions, we become empowered to respond consciously and intentionally. This shift in awareness does not require us to suppress or deny our feelings. Instead, it enables us to acknowledge them, understand their origins, and choose how to respond in a way that aligns with our values and goals. When we decode the inner world, we move from being passive participants in our emotional lives to active creators of our emotional reality. Chapter 3. Harnessing the power of awareness. Awareness is the gateway to mastering our emotions. It is the quiet space between stimulus and response, where we have the power to choose our reactions. In a world where we are often swept away by the current of our thoughts and feelings, the ability to remain present with our emotions is one of the most transformative practices we can cultivate. It is through this presence that we begin to take control of the emotional energy that arises within us, rather than being controlled by it. Being present with our emotions means acknowledging them without judgment or resistance. It is easy to become entangled in our feelings, allowing them to dictate our behavior. But when we can step back and observe our emotions as they arise, without identifying with them or labeling them as good or bad, we open ourselves up to deeper understanding. This simple act of awareness creates space between our experience and our reaction. We are no longer slaves to our emotional impulses. Instead, we become conscious witnesses to them, able to choose a response that serves us rather than one that leads us into a cycle of reaction and regret. The practice of mindfulness plays a critical role in cultivating this kind of awareness. At its core, mindfulness is the art of being fully engaged in the present moment, without distraction or judgment. When we bring mindfulness to our emotional experiences, we create a bridge between our inner world and our outer actions. Rather than automatically reacting to stress, fear, or anger, we begin to notice these emotions as they arise, observing them with curiosity rather than defensiveness. This shift in perspective allows us to understand the source of our feelings without becoming overwhelmed by them. It is as if we are stepping back and watching the storm from a place of calm, knowing that we do not have to be swept up by the winds. Mindfulness gives us the tools to untangle ourselves from the emotional narratives that often accompany our feelings. We all have an internal monologue, a running commentary that amplifies our emotions and weaves intricate stories around them. When we feel anxious, for example, our minds may start to spiral, thinking of all the worst-case scenarios. The emotional reaction is compounded by the mental stories we tell ourselves. Mindfulness teaches us to break this cycle by observing the emotions without attaching any meaning to them. We learn to notice the tightness in our chest, the racing thoughts, the physical sensations, but we do not get caught up in them. Instead, we remain present, observing these feelings with compassion and understanding. In this way, mindfulness creates an emotional buffer, giving us the space to decide how we want to respond. This practice also helps us identify emotional patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed. Emotions are not random. They are often responses to specific triggers, and over time, these triggers form patterns. Mindfulness helps us identify these patterns, bringing awareness to the emotional reactions that arise in certain situations. For example, if we regularly feel frustrated or angry in social settings, mindfulness can help us see that these emotions may stem from deep-seated beliefs about ourselves, such as feeling unworthy or insecure. With this understanding, we can begin to address the root causes of these emotions, rather than just dealing with the surface-level reactions. When we approach our emotions with mindfulness, we also cultivate emotional resilience. The more we practice being present with our feelings, the less power they have to overwhelm us. We become like a tree in a storm, firmly rooted, weathering the winds of emotion without losing our center. This resilience comes not from suppressing or avoiding emotions, but from fully experiencing them and choosing how to respond in a way that aligns with our values. Mindfulness allows us to ride the waves of our emotions with greater ease, knowing that, like the tide, they will eventually pass. Being present with our emotions also fosters a deeper connection with ourselves and others. When we are fully aware of our emotional landscape, we begin to understand what we need in any given moment. If we are feeling anxious, for instance, mindfulness allows us to recognize the signs early and take steps to soothe ourselves before the anxiety escalates. Similarly, being present with others helps us attune to their emotions, fostering empathy and stronger relationships. We are no longer simply reacting to what is said or done. We are responding from a place of understanding and awareness, creating a deeper bond with those around us. Ultimately, mindfulness transforms our relationship with our emotions. Instead of fearing them or trying to control them, we learn to embrace them as part of the human experience. By remaining present, we allow our emotions to flow freely, without resistance, and in doing so, we unlock the emotional balance that has always been available to us. Awareness is not about eliminating emotions, but about experiencing them fully and choosing how to respond. When we harness the power of awareness, we become the masters of our emotional world, able to navigate life's ups and downs with calm and clarity. Chapter 4. The Silent Shift. Emotions often arise in an instant, triggered by a fleeting thought or an external event, but the power to control them lies not in the moment of reaction, but in the silent shift of perspective that occurs before the emotional storm takes hold. This shift happens in the space between stimulus and response, a moment that can feel almost imperceptible. It is here, in the subtle transition from automatic reaction to mindful response, that true emotional control is cultivated. What begins as a small change in how we perceive a situation can ripple out, creating profound transformations in our emotional landscape over time. In our daily lives, we tend to react impulsively to emotional triggers. When someone cuts us off in traffic, we may feel a surge of anger. When we receive a critique at work, we might experience embarrassment or defensiveness. These reactions are automatic, shaped by years of conditioning and mental habits. But beneath these automatic responses lies a deeper, quieter power, the ability to change our perspective and, in doing so, change our emotional experience. By training ourselves to notice the moment of reaction and redirecting our attention, we can shift our emotional state before it spirals out of control. This silent shift in perspective does not require grand gestures or dramatic changes. It begins with small, intentional acts of awareness. For example, when faced with a stressful situation, we might pause for just a moment to consider our thoughts. Rather than assuming the worst, we can ask ourselves, what else could this mean? Or, what might I learn from this? This simple shift in questioning opens the door to a more balanced emotional response. Instead of immediately defaulting to frustration or anger, we create space for curiosity, understanding, and growth. The ability to step back and view a situation from a different angle allows us to diffuse our emotional reactions before they take hold. The key to lasting emotional control lies in transforming our habitual reactions. Many of us are unaware of how deeply ingrained our emotional responses are. These habitual reactions are like well-worn paths in our minds, often formed by past experiences or cultural conditioning. Over time, they become automatic, playing out without conscious thought. But with awareness, these patterns can be rewired. Each time we choose to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, we create a new pathway in the brain, a new habit that becomes more natural with practice. Eventually, what once felt like an effortful shift becomes a new, automatic response, one that is grounded in emotional intelligence and mindfulness. The process of transforming reactive habits into thoughtful responses is a gradual one. It requires patience and persistence, but it is also incredibly rewarding. Each time we choose to pause and reflect before responding, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our emotional triggers. We begin to notice the subtle cues that signal an emotional reaction is about to arise, an increase in heart rate, a tightening in the chest, a rush of thoughts, and we learn to intervene in those moments. By simply acknowledging the feeling without judgment, we prevent it from escalating into a full-blown emotional storm. With practice, these small shifts accumulate, leading to a more balanced and composed emotional state overall. This transformation is not about suppressing or denying emotions. It is about creating a more conscious relationship with them. Rather than allowing our emotions to control us, we learn to control our emotional responses. We recognize that emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are simply signals from the body, messages about our inner state and our relationship with the world around us. By shifting our perspective on these emotions, we can view them as opportunities for growth rather than threats to our stability. The power of the silent shift also extends to how we relate to others. In our interactions, especially in moments of conflict or tension, it is easy to fall into the trap of reacting defensively, responding out of fear, pride, or insecurity. But by cultivating a habit of mindful awareness, we can break free from these reactive patterns. Instead of immediately defending ourselves when criticized, we can pause and ask, "What is being said here that I can learn from?" Or, "What is the deeper need or concern behind this?" This shift in perspective transforms our responses from defensiveness to openness, fostering deeper, more compassionate connections with others. The silent shift is a profound and subtle change, one that doesn't require dramatic effort, but instead relies on the quiet discipline of being present with our emotions and thoughts. With each shift, we become more attuned to the underlying currents that drive our reactions, and with this understanding comes the power to choose how we respond. Over time, these small, deliberate changes in perspective accumulate, leading to a life of greater emotional freedom and control. In embracing the silent shift, we no longer react to the world around us. Instead, we respond with intention, guided by a calm center and an open heart. Chapter 5. Creating your emotional fortress. Life, by its nature, is unpredictable and often tumultuous. From unexpected challenges to moments of deep personal struggle, it is easy to feel overwhelmed by the relentless wave of emotions that can arise. However, beneath the surface of every challenge lies an opportunity for growth, and at the core of emotional strength is the ability to build an emotional fortress, one that allows you to stand strong, unwavering in the face of adversity. This fortress is not built with walls to block out the world, but with the tools and wisdom to protect your inner peace and to remain grounded amidst external turmoil. Resilience is the cornerstone of this emotional fortress. The ability to stay composed even in the most difficult situations does not come from an absence of emotion, but from a deep understanding and management of those emotions. Life's challenges are inevitable. What matters is how we respond to them. Those who are resilient are not immune to stress, pain, or hardship. They simply know how to navigate those experiences with clarity and calmness, rather than being consumed by them. This resilience can be nurtured over time through practices that build emotional strength and help us develop a fortified sense of inner stability. One powerful way to strengthen resilience is through the cultivation of a growth mindset. Those who view challenges as opportunities to learn and improve are better equipped to handle adversity. Rather than becoming paralyzed by the discomfort of failure or difficulty, they see it as part of the natural ebb and flow of life. This mindset allows them to approach each situation with curiosity and openness, asking themselves, "What can I learn from this?" and "How can I use this experience to grow stronger?" Each challenge becomes not just a test of endurance, but an invitation to expand and evolve. In creating an emotional fortress, it is essential to build strong emotional boundaries. These boundaries are not barriers to keep others out, but rather a means of preserving our energy and well-being. They allow us to protect ourselves from being unduly influenced by the emotions, opinions, or behaviors of others. Without healthy emotional boundaries, we risk being swept away by the emotional currents of those around us. We may find ourselves taking on others' stress or anger as our own, becoming drained by their negativity, or feeling overwhelmed by demands placed upon us. The key is to recognize what is ours to carry and what belongs to others, and to gently but firmly set limits where necessary. One effective way to reinforce emotional boundaries is by learning to say no when necessary. This simple yet powerful practice involves asserting ourselves in a way that prioritizes our needs and well-being. Whether it's declining an invitation to an event that drains our energy, setting limits on how much emotional labor we can give to others, or simply creating space for ourselves. Saying no allows us to preserve our emotional reserves and avoid overextending ourselves. Learning to say no is not an act of selfishness, but an act of self-care that ensures we remain strong and grounded in the face of life's demands. Another key aspect of building emotional strength is developing a practice of self-compassion. Often, when we face difficulties, our inner critic becomes the loudest voice in the room, telling us we are not doing enough, not strong enough, or not worthy of peace. This negative self-talk can undermine our resilience, making us more vulnerable to stress and emotional overwhelm. Self-compassion, on the other hand, involves treating ourselves with the same kindness, care and understanding that we would offer a friend in need. When we embrace self-compassion, we create a safe inner space where we can weather the storms of life without berating ourselves for feeling vulnerable or human. This practice strengthens our emotional resilience, enabling us to recover more quickly from setbacks and to move forward with a sense of hope and possibility. Building your emotional fortress also involves being intentional about the energy and influences you allow into your life. In the digital age, it's easy to be bombarded with negativity, whether from the news, social media, or even toxic relationships. While it's important to stay informed and engaged with the world, it's equally important to protect yourself from constant emotional drains. Setting boundaries around your media consumption, curating your social circles, and making time for positive, uplifting experiences can all help to reinforce the strength of your emotional fortress. Surround yourself with people and experiences that uplift and support you, rather than those that undermine your emotional peace. Physical health is also a vital pillar of emotional resilience. Our bodies and minds are intricately connected, and when we neglect our physical health, it becomes harder to maintain emotional stability. Regular exercise, a balanced diet, sufficient rest, and mindfulness practices all contribute to a stronger, more resilient emotional state. When we care for our physical well-being, we are better equipped to handle emotional stress, as our bodies have the energy and stamina to support us through difficult times. Additionally, engaging in activities that promote relaxation, such as yoga or meditation, can help to release built-up tension and create a sense of calm and centeredness. Finally, it's important to remember that building an emotional fortress is an ongoing practice. There will always be challenges to face, emotions to manage, and boundaries to set. However, by consistently reinforcing our resilience through daily practices and cultivating a sense of self-awareness, we can continue to strengthen our emotional fortitude. Over time, these efforts will compound, creating a solid foundation that allows us to face life's challenges with composure, clarity, and unwavering inner strength. This emotional fortress will not make us immune to life's difficulties, but it will empower us to respond to them from a place of strength, balance, and peace. Chapter 6. The Art of Emotional Regulation. Emotions are not mere reactions to the world around us. They are an intrinsic part of how we experience life. However, it's easy to feel as if we are at the mercy of our emotions, as though they control us instead of the other way around. Emotional regulation, the ability to manage and modulate our emotional responses, is not about suppressing or denying our feelings, but about finding balance. It's a skill that empowers us to face the full spectrum of human emotions with clarity and composure, responding to life's challenges with intentionality rather than impulsivity. One of the fundamental aspects of emotional regulation is understanding that emotions are complex. They arise from a mixture of past experiences, perceptions, beliefs, and the current circumstances we are navigating. Emotions often arise in reaction to a situation, but the depth and intensity of those emotions depend on how we interpret that situation. For instance, what might trigger anxiety in one person could evoke excitement in another, simply based on their personal experiences and mindset. Recognizing that emotions are both deeply personal and influenced by our inner landscape allows us to take responsibility for how we experience them. At the heart of emotional regulation is self-awareness. Without awareness, emotions can overwhelm us and lead to reactions that we later regret. The first step in regulating our emotions is the ability to notice them in real time. This can be challenging, especially when emotions are intense, but with practice we can train ourselves to become more attuned to our feelings as they arise. By noticing the physical sensations associated with different emotions, such as the tightness in the chest when we're anxious or the heat in our face when we're angry, we can catch ourselves in the moment before those feelings spiral into uncontrolled reactions. This awareness creates a gap between stimulus and response, allowing us to make a choice about how to act. Once we are aware of our emotional state, the next step is to shift our perspective. Often, our emotional reactions are influenced by the way we interpret events or the stories we tell ourselves about them. When we feel hurt, we might immediately assume that someone's actions were meant to cause us pain, and this assumption can lead to feelings of anger or resentment. However, by pausing to question our interpretations, asking ourselves whether our perspective is based on facts or assumptions, we create space for more balanced emotional responses. This ability to reframe situations allows us to regulate our emotions by choosing a more measured and less reactive response. In addition to cognitive reframing, physical techniques can be incredibly effective in managing emotions. The body and mind are interconnected, and by adjusting our physical state, we can influence our emotional state. One of the simplest yet most powerful ways to regulate emotions in real time is through breathwork. Slow, deep breaths signal to the nervous system that the body is safe, activating the parasympathetic system, which helps calm the emotional brain. Focusing on the breath allows us to ground ourselves in the present moment, interrupting the cycle of reactive emotions and bringing a sense of calm and clarity. By making conscious breathing a regular practice, we develop the ability to use it in moments of emotional intensity, allowing us to pause before responding. Another effective method of emotional regulation is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of observing our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment. Rather than getting swept up in the storylines that our minds create, mindfulness encourages us to witness our emotions as temporary experiences that come and go. This shift in perspective helps us detach from the emotional charge and allows us to observe it without becoming overwhelmed by it. Over time, mindfulness cultivates emotional resilience, helping us respond with greater composure and wisdom when life presents us with difficulties. Emotional regulation also involves managing the energy we expend on emotions. It's easy to get stuck in a cycle of rumination, where we repeatedly replay a frustrating interaction or agonize over a missed opportunity. This kind of mental looping can amplify emotions like anxiety, anger, or regret. By practicing techniques such as distraction or redirecting our focus, we can prevent our emotions from consuming us. Engaging in a physical activity, focusing on a creative outlet, or simply getting outside for a walk can help break the cycle of overthinking and provide much-needed emotional release. Sometimes emotions are so intense that it feels impossible to calm down. In these instances, giving ourselves permission to feel without judgment can be a powerful step in regulation. Rather than fighting the emotion or pretending it doesn't exist, we can acknowledge it as part of our human experience. This acceptance allows the emotion to flow through us, preventing it from building up and creating an emotional storm. When we stop resisting, we often find that the emotion dissipates more quickly than we expected. For long-term emotional regulation, it is crucial to create a foundation of self-care. Our emotional state is directly influenced by our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Engaging in activities that nourish our body, mind, and soul can help maintain emotional balance and make us more resilient to the stresses and challenges of life. Adequate sleep, healthy eating, exercise, and time for relaxation are all essential practices for maintaining emotional stability. By prioritizing self-care, we create the emotional resources we need to navigate life's ups and downs with grace. The practice of emotional regulation is a lifelong journey that requires patience, self-compassion, and perseverance. It is not about perfect control or never experiencing intense emotions. Rather, it is about cultivating the awareness and skills necessary to respond to emotions with wisdom and balance, so that we can remain steady and grounded, regardless of what life throws our way. As we develop this skill, we learn not just to survive our emotions, but to thrive alongside them, using them as tools for growth and deeper understanding. Chapter 7. Embracing your emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the quiet force that shapes our ability to connect with others, navigate social landscapes, and build meaningful relationships. It is the bridge between our internal world and the external one we share with others, offering us the tools to not only manage our own emotions, but also understand and influence the emotions of those around us. The path to emotional intelligence begins with a deep and honest exploration of ourselves, our triggers, our strengths, and our vulnerabilities. But it also extends to our capacity for empathy, awareness, and compassion towards others. In a world where connection is paramount, embracing emotional intelligence is not just a personal asset, but a powerful social tool. At the heart of emotional intelligence lies empathy. This quality enables us to step outside of our own experiences and imagine what it's like to be someone else. It is the ability to tune into another person's emotional state and respond with understanding, creating an atmosphere of trust and support. Empathy isn't just about listening to words, it's about interpreting the emotions that lie beneath them. When we truly listen to someone, we don't just hear their concerns, we feel them. This deep attunement allows us to engage in more meaningful conversations, offering compassion rather than judgment and support rather than advice. Cultivating empathy requires more than just passive listening. It demands active participation. It involves setting aside our own assumptions and judgments, allowing the other person to express their feelings fully before we react. In practice, this means resisting the urge to offer solutions or fix problems immediately. Instead, it means creating space for the other person to be seen and heard. This can be particularly challenging when we feel uncomfortable with another person's emotions, but it is through this discomfort that we develop a greater sense of connection. Rather than turning away from difficult emotions, emotional intelligence invites us to lean in, recognizing that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a bridge to deeper understanding. As we deepen our emotional awareness, we also become more attuned to the emotions of those around us. This heightened awareness allows us to navigate social interactions with greater ease, responding to subtle cues that others may not even realize they're giving. Whether it's a change in body language, a shift in tone, or a fleeting expression on someone's face, our ability to pick up on these non-verbal signals can significantly enhance our interactions. Recognizing when someone is upset, anxious, or delighted, even before they say a word, enables us to adjust our responses accordingly, creating an environment where communication flows more smoothly. Moreover, emotional intelligence gives us the power to influence not only our own emotional state, but also the emotional atmosphere of a group. It allows us to step into a room and immediately gauge the energy, recognizing when tension is building or when calmness prevails. Armed with this awareness, we can adjust our approach to fit the situation. Whether we need to diffuse a tense moment with humor, offer reassurance, or give space for someone's feelings, emotional intelligence enables us to respond in a way that fosters connection and harmony. However, emotional intelligence is not just about understanding others. It also requires a strong understanding of ourselves. In complex social interactions, the way we respond to others is often influenced by our own emotional triggers, biases, and past experiences. The more we are able to examine and understand our own emotional responses, the less likely we are to react impulsively or defensively in social situations. Emotional intelligence asks us to pause and reflect, to consider why we are feeling a particular way, and to question whether our reactions are based on the present moment or a past wound. By doing so, we create space for more thoughtful responses, which in turn strengthens our relationships with others. This deeper self-awareness is also integral to conflict resolution. Disagreements are inevitable in any social or professional environment, but how we handle them determines the health of our relationships. With emotional intelligence, we approach conflict not as a battle to win, but as an opportunity to better understand one another. By listening with empathy and responding with consideration, we can navigate even the most challenging conversations without escalating the situation. In fact, our ability to remain calm, present, and compassionate during a disagreement often has the power to transform the conflict into a bonding experience where both parties feel heard and respected. Building emotional intelligence also enhances our ability to express our emotions effectively. In many social settings, we may feel the pressure to hide or suppress our true feelings, whether out of fear of judgment or a desire to maintain harmony. Yet, when we withhold our emotions, we limit our ability to truly connect with others. Emotional intelligence encourages us to be authentic in our emotional expression, while still maintaining awareness of the impact our words may have on others. By being mindful of how we communicate our feelings, we ensure that our emotions are understood, but also that we create an open space for others to share their feelings as well. Furthermore, emotional intelligence allows us to be more flexible and adaptive in our social interactions. Life is constantly changing, and so are the people we interact with. The ability to adjust our responses based on the situation, the person we're engaging with, and the context of the conversation makes us more effective communicators and more valued contributors in any social setting. Whether we're dealing with someone who is angry, upset, or joyous, emotional intelligence allows us to remain present and respond in a way that fosters positive outcomes. Embracing emotional intelligence is an ongoing journey. It requires constant practice, introspection, and a willingness to grow. But the rewards are immeasurable. As we become more attuned to our own emotions and those of others, we unlock the potential for deeper, more authentic connections. We gain the ability to navigate complex social dynamics with grace, turning even the most challenging interactions into opportunities for understanding and growth. Through emotional intelligence, we not only enhance our personal relationships, but also contribute to creating a world where empathy, respect, and connection are the guiding principles of all human exchange. Chapter 8. Rewriting the emotional script. Our emotions, often formed from years of experiences and internalized beliefs, shape the way we respond to the world around us. These emotional patterns become embedded deep within our psyche, forming a script that governs how we react to challenges, successes, relationships, and everyday situations. Much like the lines in a play, this emotional script is written over time, based on how we were conditioned, the events we've lived through, and the stories we've told ourselves. However, just as an actor can change their lines or performance, we too have the power to rewrite our emotional script, transforming it into one that empowers us instead of limiting us. When we begin to recognize the repetitive emotional reactions we have, it becomes clear that they are not always the product of the present moment. Rather, they are echoes of past experiences, often learned in childhood or reinforced through years of habitual thinking. These responses may have once served a protective function, a way of navigating a difficult world, but they can quickly become obsolete, leaving us stuck in emotional loops that prevent growth. The first step in rewriting this script is to become acutely aware of these ingrained patterns. The process of recognition is not always easy, as it requires us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Many of these patterns have become so ingrained that they are nearly automatic. We might find ourselves reacting with frustration or anger in situations where calmness is warranted, or retreating into sadness or guilt when we face challenges. These emotional responses often have little to do with the present situation and everything to do with our personal narrative, the beliefs we carry about ourselves, others, and the world. Rewriting our emotional script begins with the acknowledgement that we are not our emotions. Emotions are transient. They come and go, often as quickly as the weather changes. The key to breaking free from old patterns is recognizing that our emotions do not define us. We are the ones who give them meaning, who attach stories to the way we feel. It is within this space of awareness that we can begin to create a new script, one that is less about automatic reactions and more about conscious responses. A critical part of rewriting this script involves identifying the root causes of our emotional responses. For example, if we find ourselves feeling defensive in social situations, we may trace this feeling back to a past experience where we were criticized or rejected. Understanding the origin of this response allows us to see that it is not the present situation that is triggering the emotion, but rather the unresolved feelings from the past. This insight allows us to separate past experiences from current realities, freeing us from being shackled by old emotions. Once we understand the origin of our emotional patterns, the next step is to consciously choose how we want to respond in the future. This is where the true power of emotional transformation lies, learning to make deliberate choices instead of being driven by automatic emotional reactions. For example, instead of responding to criticism with anger or withdrawal, we can choose to see it as an opportunity for growth, or even a sign of someone's own struggles that we can empathize with. Instead of falling into despair when facing a setback, we can reframe it as a challenge to be overcome, an opportunity to build resilience. A powerful tool in rewriting our emotional script is to shift the focus from "what is wrong with me" to "what is possible for me." By reframing challenges and emotional triggers in a way that emphasizes potential and growth, we release ourselves from the limitations of past pain. It is not about denying our emotions or suppressing them. Rather, it is about acknowledging them without being controlled by them. When we view emotions as messages rather than truths, we can respond in ways that reflect our current aspirations and values, not just our old wounds. In this process, we also begin to realize that emotions, even the most difficult ones, can serve as a source of strength. Fear, for example, often arises in the face of the unknown or the challenging. But fear also signals a desire for change and growth. By embracing fear and using it as a motivator, we transform it from an obstacle into an ally. The same is true for anger, sadness, or frustration. Each emotion carries with it a message that can help us uncover unmet needs, unhealed wounds, or important lessons. When we stop seeing these emotions as adversaries, we can use them to propel us forward rather than hold us back. One of the most transformative aspects of rewriting the emotional script is learning how to integrate these new emotional responses into our daily life. It is not enough to understand the theory of emotional regulation. We must practice it in real-time situations. This means pausing before reacting, observing our emotional response, and choosing a path that aligns with our true values. Over time, these small, deliberate shifts become new habits, slowly replacing old, automatic reactions with empowered, thoughtful responses. Furthermore, rewriting our emotional script doesn't mean that we will never experience negative emotions again. In fact, we will still encounter moments of fear, doubt, anger, or sadness. What changes is how we meet these emotions. Instead of seeing them as threats or signs of failure, we come to understand them as integral parts of our human experience, each one carrying an opportunity for growth and deeper self-awareness. By embracing this process, we empower ourselves to break free from the limitations imposed by our past emotional patterns. We learn to see ourselves as capable of navigating the world with emotional resilience, strength, and clarity. The emotional script we rewrite is one of empowerment, where our responses are aligned with who we are becoming, not just who we once were. It is a script that elevates us, guiding us to live with greater presence, purpose, and peace. Chapter 9. Mastering your response. Every day we are faced with a multitude of situations that require us to respond emotionally. Whether it's a challenging conversation, a moment of stress at work, or a sudden change in plans, how we react in those moments shapes not only our experience, but also our long-term emotional well-being. Most of us, however, are not always in control of these responses. Often, they are automatic, impulsive reactions rooted in old patterns, past experiences, or deep-seated fears. But it doesn't have to be this way. The key to emotional mastery lies in shifting from these automatic reactions to conscious, intentional choices that align with our values and aspirations. To begin, it is essential to recognize that we are not powerless in the face of our emotions. Far from it. Every emotion is an opportunity for action, but the way we respond determines the direction of that action. This is the core of emotional mastery, the ability to pause, reflect, and choose the most constructive response rather than being at the mercy of knee-jerk reactions. True power comes from the awareness that we can interrupt the cycle of emotional reflexes and create a space for deliberate decision-making. The first step in mastering your response is to cultivate awareness of your emotional triggers. These triggers are the situations or behaviors that automatically set off a chain reaction of thoughts, feelings, and actions. They could be a word, a look, a situation, or even a particular memory. When you are unaware of these triggers, your reactions can feel out of your control, and you may find yourself caught in cycles of frustration, defensiveness, or anxiety. By becoming conscious of your triggers, you give yourself the power to interrupt them before they dictate your emotional state. Once you've identified your triggers, the next step is to observe your initial emotional responses without judgment. This means allowing yourself to feel what you feel, whether it's anger, fear, or sadness, but without immediately acting on those emotions. The trick is not to repress these feelings, but rather to observe them as an outsider would. This allows you to create some distance between the emotion itself and your subsequent behavior. In that space, you have the opportunity to choose a different course of action. Conscious choice is the cornerstone of emotional agility. It's the ability to step outside the immediate emotional reaction and decide how you want to respond. For example, when faced with criticism, your initial instinct might be to become defensive, to argue, or to shut down. But through emotional mastery, you can choose to listen actively, to ask questions for clarity, or to simply acknowledge the feedback without attaching your self-worth to it. The more you practice this conscious response, the more it becomes your natural default. Emotional agility also requires the ability to flex your emotional responses according to the demands of each situation. There are times when compassion, patience, or empathy are necessary, and other moments when assertiveness, strength, or even detachment is the best course of action. The key to mastering your emotional response is learning how to switch between these different emotional states with fluidity and without overthinking. This flexibility is not something that comes overnight, but rather through consistent practice and self-reflection. Each situation you face presents an opportunity to strengthen your emotional agility by choosing the most appropriate response. Another critical aspect of emotional mastery is learning to embrace discomfort. Often, we are conditioned to avoid unpleasant emotions, to suppress them or escape from them, but growth happens when we face these emotions head-on. For instance, feelings of fear or anxiety may arise when you are asked to step out of your comfort zone. Rather than reacting with avoidance or self-doubt, emotional mastery involves sitting with those feelings and using them as signals for growth. In fact, some of the most transformative experiences come from navigating uncomfortable emotional states with grace and resilience. Part of this process involves reframing how we perceive difficult situations. Rather than viewing challenges as threats, we can choose to see them as opportunities for learning. When we are faced with adversity, the automatic response might be to feel defeated or to retreat. But through conscious awareness, we can choose to view each challenge as a stepping stone toward our personal evolution. It is in these moments of discomfort that we are able to develop the resilience, patience, and fortitude that will serve us well in all areas of life. As we continue to develop emotional agility, we must also learn how to regulate the intensity of our emotional reactions. Sometimes, emotions can feel overwhelming, especially in high-stress situations. Learning to modulate the intensity of your feelings is an essential skill for emotional mastery. For example, if you find yourself becoming irritable or upset, rather than allowing that emotion to escalate, you can use breathing techniques, positive self-talk, or mindful awareness to bring yourself back to center. Over time, these practices allow you to maintain emotional composure, even in the most challenging circumstances. The ability to build emotional agility is also linked to self-compassion. When we make mistakes or react impulsively, it's easy to fall into self-criticism. However, it is important to approach ourselves with the same understanding and kindness that we would offer a friend in a similar situation. Self-compassion is not about excusing poor behavior, but about recognizing that we are human and we are bound to have moments of emotional misstep. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we give ourselves the space to grow, learn, and respond more thoughtfully in the future. Finally, mastering your emotional response means taking ownership of your emotional state. While circumstances or other people may influence how we feel, we are ultimately responsible for how we choose to respond. This level of emotional ownership empowers us to create the life we desire. It shifts the focus from being a passive participant in our emotions to becoming the active creator of our experiences. When we master our response, we gain control over our emotional world, allowing us to navigate life with clarity, confidence, and composure. Chapter 10. Sustaining Emotional Mastery. Emotional mastery is not a destination, but a continuous journey. It is easy to maintain composure in moments of peace when life flows smoothly and the demands are minimal. However, true emotional control is revealed when we are tested during times of stress, uncertainty, or conflict. The ability to remain calm, grounded, and in control amidst adversity is the hallmark of someone who has mastered their emotions. The path to sustaining emotional mastery requires more than just reactive techniques. It demands a commitment to lifelong habits that foster emotional resilience, adaptability, and strength. One of the foundational principles for sustaining emotional mastery is the understanding that adversity is not something to be avoided, but something to be engaged with mindfully. Life will always present challenges, whether in personal relationships, professional struggles, or unexpected setbacks. The key is not to be caught off guard by these challenges, but to prepare mentally and emotionally to meet them. Developing this mindset requires the practice of emotional preparedness, accepting that life is full of uncertainties, and the ability to navigate through them with grace is what truly defines emotional strength. The first step in maintaining emotional control during difficult times is self-awareness. This means having a clear understanding of your emotional triggers, as well as knowing how you typically react under pressure. When emotions are running high, it is easy to fall into autopilot and let old patterns take over. By developing the ability to recognize when these patterns begin to surface, you create an opportunity for pause. This moment of awareness, even if brief, allows you to step back and choose a more thoughtful, deliberate response. It is in these moments of awareness that emotional mastery is both tested and refined. In addition to self-awareness, the ability to center yourself amidst chaos is a powerful tool in sustaining emotional mastery. When faced with adversity, it is common to feel overwhelmed or scattered. One of the most effective ways to regain control is to return to your breath. Breathing is not just a physical process. It is a tool for calming the mind and resetting the nervous system. When you feel yourself becoming anxious, angry, or stressed, focus on deep, slow breaths. This simple practice creates an anchor, allowing you to regain focus and restore inner calm. The more consistently you use this technique, the more automatic it becomes, helping you remain centered in the midst of any emotional storm. Another vital aspect of sustaining emotional mastery is cultivating emotional resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks, disappointments, and failures without allowing them to define your emotional state. Life is full of curveballs, and the ability to maintain emotional stability despite them is what separates those who remain emotionally grounded from those who falter. Resilience is not about being impervious to emotional pain, but rather about developing the strength to experience hardship without losing your sense of self. Building resilience involves continuously embracing challenges as opportunities for growth. Each adversity becomes an opportunity to refine your ability to remain calm and composed under pressure. A key component of emotional resilience is the practice of reframing. Reframing allows you to shift your perspective on difficult situations, transforming them from threats into opportunities. For example, instead of seeing a setback at work as a failure, you can view it as a lesson in perseverance and adaptability. This shift in mindset strengthens your emotional response and allows you to approach adversity with a sense of curiosity and determination rather than fear or frustration. By regularly practicing reframing, you develop a habit of seeing challenges as stepping stones rather than obstacles, allowing you to maintain emotional stability even in the face of hardship. Equally important is the cultivation of a supportive environment that encourages emotional mastery. The people with whom you surround yourself have a profound impact on your emotional state. Being in the presence of individuals who value emotional intelligence, who encourage growth, and who embody calmness and positivity can inspire and reinforce your own emotional resilience. Conversely, negative or toxic environments can drain your emotional energy, leading to unnecessary stress and anxiety. To sustain emotional control, it is essential to create and nurture an environment that supports your emotional well-being. This includes both your physical space and your social connections, ensuring that you are surrounded by people who uplift you and environments that foster peace and mindfulness. Consistent self-care is another pillar of sustaining emotional mastery. Taking care of your physical, mental, and emotional health is not a luxury but a necessity for long-term emotional stability. When your body is tired or stressed, it becomes more difficult to maintain emotional control. Regular exercise, healthy eating, and sufficient sleep are foundational to maintaining balance. Mental health practices such as meditation, journaling, or engaging in creative activities also play an important role in sustaining emotional mastery. By committing to self-care, you replenish your emotional reserves, ensuring that you are better equipped to handle the challenges life throws at you. The practice of gratitude is another essential habit in sustaining emotional control. In times of adversity, it is easy to focus on what is going wrong. However, shifting your attention to what is going right can have a profound effect on your emotional state. Gratitude helps to reframe your perspective, shifting your focus from scarcity to abundance. When you practice gratitude regularly, you train your mind to see opportunities even in the midst of difficulty, and you build an emotional resilience that is not easily shaken. Even in the toughest of times, a simple acknowledgement of the things you are thankful for can restore your emotional balance. Sustaining emotional mastery also requires a deep understanding of the importance of emotional detachment. Emotional detachment is not about being indifferent or numb to the world around you, but rather about developing the ability to separate your emotions from the external circumstances. This means not allowing the opinions or actions of others to dictate how you feel. Emotional detachment is about maintaining your inner peace, regardless of what is happening externally. This practice allows you to engage fully with life while preserving your emotional stability. When you are able to detach from external events and focus on your internal state, you free yourself from the grip of reactive emotions. Lastly, emotional mastery is an ongoing practice. It requires patience and commitment, especially when faced with difficult situations. Over time, you will find that you have developed an unshakable sense of emotional control, one that allows you to navigate the ups and downs of life with clarity, compassion, and strength. By making emotional mastery a lifelong habit, you create a foundation of peace and resilience that will carry you through any storm, helping you to stay calm, cool, and in control, no matter what life brings. Conclusion: emotional mastery is not a destination, but an ongoing journey, one that demands patience, practice, and perseverance. As you've explored the depth and power of your emotions, you've uncovered the subtle, often hidden forces that shape your responses and experiences. The process of becoming emotionally empowered is about more than just handling stress or overcoming difficult moments. It's about transforming the way you relate to yourself, others, and the world around you, creating a sense of balance and resilience that allows you to move through life with clarity and purpose. In the face of challenges, it's not the absence of emotions that defines mastery, but the presence of choice. You've learned that emotions are not obstacles to overcome, but guides to follow. The more you cultivate awareness and practice intentional responses, the more naturally emotional resilience becomes a part of who you are. Over time, the habits that once seemed out of reach become second nature, and your ability to remain calm, cool, and in control becomes a living reflection of your inner strength. The key lies in remembering that emotional mastery doesn't require perfection. It's about embracing the ebb and flow of emotions without letting them control your actions. Each emotional experience becomes an opportunity for growth, a chance to reinforce the skills that keep you grounded and present. With every choice to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively, you are building a deeper sense of confidence and self-mastery. As you continue to develop these practices, remember that you are not simply seeking to avoid difficult emotions, but to navigate them with grace. Life will always present challenges, and emotions will always arise. But with the tools you've gained, you can choose the path of emotional agility, one where your responses are shaped not by the whims of the moment, but by the strength of your intentions. Your journey doesn't end here. It's a lifelong process of self-discovery, self-expression, and self-mastery. The more you practice, the more effortless emotional balance will feel, and the more deeply you'll connect with your true potential. Embrace the journey with open hands, knowing that with every step forward, you are becoming the person capable of facing life's challenges with unwavering calm, clear purpose, and unshakable emotional strength.